recording. And we will begin. Good evening, good evening. We are pleased to welcome you, the Resident Association board members, colleagues, and guests to tonight's conversation with the NYCHA Federal Monitor. My name is Floretta Hudson. I serve as project associate to the Monitor team, and I will be your moderator for tonight. So let's get right to it. I'm happy to introduce the NYCHA Federal Monitor, Bart Swartz. Over to you, Mr. Swartz.
Thank you, Floretta. I appreciate that. And good evening to everyone. Hello again to many of you who I have met in the past at family days and other events. And I know the work that you've done. And I'm looking forward to meeting those of you who are newly elected or newly involved in this process. My name is Bart Swartz, and I was appointed to be Federal Monitor over NYCHA as of March 1st, 2019. And the purpose of the monitorship is to help ensure that NYCHA makes progress towards ensuring decent, safe, and sanitary living conditions for all of its residents. The creation of the monitorship was resulted from an agreement between HUD, NYCHA, and the city of New York to appoint someone to help NYCHA reach and meet its commitments under the HUD agreement. And you can think of the HUD agreement that really is a contract and a commitment on behalf of NYCHA to meet certain milestones and to undertake certain efforts. The agreement itself has all of my authority in it. I'm not a receiver. Often people think of the role as a receiver, and I do want to draw that distinction. I don't have the power or authority to hire and fire. And in fact, the HUD agreement specifically states that I am not to be involved in day-to-day operations. The reality is that much of what we do does impact and involve day-to-day operations, and is intended to, because the HUD agreement is very much focused on getting as much improvement as possible now with whatever resources are available and whatever work can be done by NYCHA. It's not focused on many other plans that you see, which are often years ahead, usually capital programs. Those are important and excellent programs as well. But for many of those, as they say, there isn't a shovel in the ground for years, and that's not going to make much of a difference in the immediate operation of NYCHA. So our focus is day to day, even though we're not involved to operate day to day. So I'd like to thank you again for those who've already been working with us for the valuable help that you provide for us, the meetings you attend, the information you provide, the ability to carry on community relations so that we can talk to people and understand how things are going. I'd like to introduce some of our people who are here today. I'm not sure exactly how this works visibly, but I certainly don't want to leave their names out. That's Asha Muldrow, Edna Handy, Tamika Williams, Floretta, who is our hostess, Patricia Gambale, Chase Stanford, and Fred Baldino. And there are many others but those are the ones who I think are here today and have been very much involved in activities. So we wanted to have this meeting because I believe the resident association boards play a critical role in helping NYCHA improve, just as we have also tried to work and have worked with CCOP in its work. We also want to be working with the resident associations. And I want to make sure that all of you are aware of the work that we do and how we conduct ourselves. I know that as we stand here today, the improvements that we sought to make and have been trying to make, not as many have reached your day-to-day lives as we would have hoped. The pandemic, it's easy to blame things for it, the pandemic and other problems, but the fact is it's been difficult to move NYCHA to make sure that things improve. But things are well on their way, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. And a great deal of work has been done, which has not yet reached you directly, but will have a benefit for you. And just to give you an example, we brought in experts who have taught NYCHA how to use analytics to analyze the work that it does and how to make it more efficient and to get more bang for the buck out of the money that's available. And much of the analytics was already in NYCHA's system, but wasn't being used. Now it is being used to run pilot projects, and as I said, to make things more efficient. So that's something that is important, not only because it has some immediate effect, but it also is important because NYCHA is learning how to apply those analytics in the future when there is no monitor and no need for a monitor. Now, another purpose of this meeting is to make sure that you understand the types of issues that you can contact us about. And those are the various elements of the HUD agreement. And I think most of you have heard them, and in some materials that will follow, we'll give you a little more detail about them, but such as heat and lead and mold and the things that you've heard about. So we're going to continue to have the community meetings that we've had in the past. I made a commitment that we would have community meetings in every borough. We rotate, and we did that, and we continue to do that. Before the pandemic, we did it in person. During the pandemic, we did it remotely, and we'll be going back to doing it in person if it seems safe. We thought we could do it sooner, but I don't know with the health conditions now whether that's the right thing to do. But if not, we'll do it remotely, but we'll do it in a way so people can participate. And we will again rotate every other month to one county or another so that everyone is covered. I'm not going to speak too much about individual actions because you're going to hear more about heat from one of my colleagues and what's been happening there. I will tell you that this is the first season that we believe NYCHA has significantly improved its preventative maintenance, which has been one of the main causes of problems in the past. They weren't prepared for the winter season. And this year, we believe they have prepared and done a great deal to prepare, and the results should be improved, certainly as to the performance of boilers. The one thing that is very difficult to control and we cannot anticipate and repair in advance is the failures of the distribution system, the pipes that bring the heat and the hot water into the buildings. And that those distribution systems are, of course, very old, as the buildings are, but they are probably responsible for about 50% of the outages. But we're putting a great focus on responding to those outages, even if the distribution as quickly as possible, and in that way trying to reduce the time that there were any outages. You'll also hear a little bit, I think, about one of the things that we're very proud of, which is the work that NYCHA has done in installing or inspecting over 6,000 roof fans. As many of you may know, the fans, many of them did not operate or did not operate effectively, but those fans were relied upon for ventilation. In many of the bathrooms, for example, there are no windows, and also the ducts through which the air is supposed to pass, in many cases had not been cleaned in 50 or 60 years. But over 6,100 new roof fans were installed. 67,000 vents have been cleaned. As I said, some of them for the first time in decades. And over 2,000 other roof fans have been inspected by engineers and were functional and did not have to be removed. Most of that work was completed by the end of the summer. And this was a task that NYCHA told us it was impossible to do. They just prepared us for it. It can't happen. We don't have the money. We don't have everything you need. They said they didn't have. But what they did have was a strong team that wanted to get it done. And we worked together with that team. And that's how this excellent result occurred. I can tell you, and this is not a scientific study, but we think it's indicative of the effectiveness of the work that was done. In the mold cases, for example, in October 2021, and around that period, the complaints with mold were averaging about 1,700 new mold cases requiring significant remediation each month. Since January of this year, that number has dropped to an average of about 830 cases per month. And there may be other elements that make this difference, but there's no doubt that this ventilation project has made a big difference. And a third element that we want to work into this is bathroom enclosures, which, as you know, because of the water that leaks, not only is it leak from apartment to apartment, but also within an apartment, that again creates a mold problem. And we really believe that by installing bathroom enclosures, that will reduce the mold complaints even more. This is another project we've been told they probably can't do. So it's just the kind of project we want, and we'll be focusing on trying to get it done. I could not speak to you today without talking about the issue of rent arrears, which the NYCHA budget is going to be under budget by about $400 million based on rent arrears. And it's a very perplexing problem, but I hope there'll be a solution. What has happened is that under the ERAB program, the Emergency Rent Advancement Program, under ERAB, those in government who are responsible for reviewing ERAB applications have made all of those applications pending. They're not being reviewed. If an application is pending, the court system has said there can't be any proceedings against people who are not paying rent, and I can understand the sense of that. But also the one-off opportunities to get rental help from HPD and other places, they've also taken the same position that as long as an application is pending, they will not release money to those residents. So we're in a situation where there is an ERAB program that has no money in it. We have nobody reviewing the pending applications, and the residents who need help are not getting any rent help, and they cannot pay the rent, and therefore we have this very serious uh, uh, arrears problem, which is very significant for the NYCHA budget. And it's not just the operations budget, because there are many capital programs, such as building, putting in new elevators and other things, which rely on the operational budget for funding to do planning and other things. So it is a problem for both sides of the house, so to speak, both daily operation and the capital programs that everyone is relying on. I know that I'm going to anticipate one question we may get later, and I'd just like to cover it, and that is the problems that occurred at Reese and the reports of arsenic, the contamination, and the later reports that there's no health hazard. I really can't talk about it too much. What we did is joined up with the New York City Department of Investigation, which is doing an independent investigation. We really thought it was the sensible thing to do, that not to have two different organizations investigating the same issue. So we're working together. And when that report is issued, we'll have more to say about the events there. So we're about to enter our fifth year. We've been issuing frequent reports, and we'll continue to do so. We'll be making ourselves available through events such as these and by visiting you. We have a staff of individuals, mostly out of the NYPD, who are every day visiting developments and are always available to meet with you. There are various ways to alert us if you want to talk to us and to meet with us, and you'll hear more about that later in the program. Also, in our website are the action plans, which are the sort of the subcontracts that NYCHA committed to and signed, which we wrote with them, or they wrote and we had to approve. Those are the action plans that tell us what NYCHA's further commitments are and what they have to do. There's a lot more, and we'll continue to try through the year to keep you informed. We really want you to talk to us and tell us where you think you need additional help. It helps direct us. Although we're not dealing with day-to-day issues, so to speak, with day-to-day apartment problems, the fact is, when you tell us about a problem at an apartment, it helps us understand whether it's part of a pattern and we better get more involved in a particular issue. We think we know what the major issues are. You don't need a monitor to figure that out, about heat and mold and lead. I've said very little about lead, but I'm very proud to tell you, and NYCHA should be proud to tell you, and I think they are, that they've developed probably the best program in the country to protect children under 6 from lead-based paint in public housing. And that program is a model for others, even to the point, many of you may know this, that if a family may not have a child, but a woman is pregnant and wants to get into the program before the child is born, which makes a lot of sense, one click on the website and they're in the program, and they will get the help that a family would have if they already had children under 6. And that's something that's been very important to me personally, because it's probably the only thing that there's no way to reverse the harm done. If a child is damaged, there's nothing that can be done to fix that going forward. We consider that an emergency from day one, and NYCHA is doing an excellent job with it now. So I'm sure I've used more time than you allotted to me, Floretta. I could see that in your eyes, but I really want to to get in as much as I could, and now I'll turn it back to you. And of course, we'll stay with you and be available to answer questions later on.
Not
Thank
at
you.
all, Bart. Thank you so much, Mr. Swartz, and thank you for those updates. You've touched on a number of items which I believe could speak to some of the questions or comments we may hear from tonight's attendees. So we look forward to the opportunity to elaborate and engage on these and other items throughout the meeting.
Thank you. When did you decide to call me Mr. Schwartz? I may like it, so it's good.
Get used to that. Well, with that, I'm happy to walk through the agenda with everyone tonight. Again, we thank Mr. Swartz for his opening remarks. As he mentioned, we will watch a short video as we appreciate that most of you are joining tonight's meeting for the first time in your newly elected office and may appreciate some more background on how this monitorship, particularly its role to serve the residents of NYCHA. And then we have a heat update from our deputy monitor, Dan Burnell, who will provide an update on heat. I just said that. And following Dan, we will open the floor for a Q&A discussion. It is at this point of the meeting, we look forward to hearing from the residents. We want to hear what's going on at your development, the issues you may be facing, any comments, questions, or concerns you may have. If you would like to speak tonight, please use the chat or raise your hand. This will indicate to us that you desire to speak. We will chat back and get you moved over to the panelist room where you'll join the lineup to speak. My colleague, Chase Stanford, is behind the scenes tonight. He's managing the chat. He's already, I see that he's already engaging with you, and he will be your point person. He is available to you right now to respond to your messages. We encourage you to chat with him and get in line early so we can position you to voice your feedback. After Q&A, we will take a few minutes to put the spotlight on a few residents who were kind enough to send in some good news to share with everyone tonight. And lastly, Bart will give final remarks and close us out. So without any further delay, I'm going to play the short video. Thank you.
Who or what is the NYCHA Federal Monitor, and how did it come about? Let's look at the timeline and key progressions of this monitorship. At the outcry of NYCHA residents, on June 11, 2018, the United States filed a complaint against NYCHA in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. The United States alleged that NYCHA breached its duty to provide decent, safe, and sanitary housing for residents and had failed to comply with lead paint regulations, protecting children from lead poisoning. It also alleged that NYCHA repeatedly misled the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, through false statements and deceptive practices. To tackle these and other problems at NYCHA, the Southern District, HUD, NYCHA, and the City of New York entered into an agreement to resolve the federal lawsuit. The agreement is intended to remedy the deficient physical conditions in NYCHA properties, ensure that NYCHA complies with applicable federal law, reform NYCHA's management structure, and facilitate cooperation and coordination between HUD, NYCHA, and the city. The agreement dated January 31st, 2019, required the city to engage a monitor to oversee NYCHA's compliance with the agreement and make public reports on NYCHA's progress. Mr. Schwartz was appointed as federal monitor on February 28, 2019, and NYCHA was obligated to cooperate in all respects with actions taken by the monitor under the agreement, which directs NYCHA to make significant changes in many different areas. Mr. Schwartz's duty as the monitor is to drive meaningful change at NYCHA and work independently on behalf of the estimated 400,000 NYCHA residents living in all 5 boroughs. Another mandate of the agreement required NYCHA to submit action plans to address the widespread problems of heat and hot water, elevators, pests, waste, mold, and lead. Each action plan submitted includes milestones to be achieved by specific completion dates. The monitor was mandated to approve or reject each action plan. Another key component of the agreement is recognizing the importance of community and resident engagement as a comprehensive solution to the many long-standing problems at NYCHA. Accordingly, the monitor convened a Community Advisory Committee, also known as CAC, that meets every 2 months to solicit stakeholder input regarding the achievement of the agreement's purpose and establish additional procedures beyond the CAC for communication with those stakeholders. The monitor engages with NYCHA resident groups, city agencies, and elected officials to share solutions for matters related to the agreement. Under the agreement, the monitor is not responsible for the day-to-day operations of NYCHA. However, we have not ignored individual complaints when they have been brought to our attention, because these individual complaints may indicate larger problems. In conclusion, the monitor, along with an experienced team of diverse backgrounds and talents, is committed to the work to turn around performance in the near term and to craft a comprehensive plan for lasting success for NYCHA residents. To date, the monitor has released 13 public reports describing our work and progress in achieving the goals of the agreement. You can find these reports, including the HUD agreement and the completed action plans, on the monitor's website at NYCHAmonitor.com, which also provides information on how to contact us by email or toll-free number. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swartz, would you like to add anything before we proceed?
No, well, I think I've talked enough for the moment.
Okay, great. So we will proceed and move forward. And this will bring us to our first poll. As a brief follow-up to the video, if you have your smart device, poll number 1 should appear on your screen. I will just click it now. It should appear on your screen. There are some questions there. Please answer each question and submit your responses. We'll give you a few minutes. And we see that people are responding. Thank you very much. Give it another minute. Thank you. So these are just a few. Did you know about the NYCHA Federal Monitor before this meeting? And have you visited our website in the past? And how do you prefer for the monitor to communicate with you or your development? We're going to use the results of this poll to better communicate with you in the future. So anytime that we have an opportunity to gather information from you, trust me, we really do appreciate your responses, because we need them to do better planning for you. So thank you for participating in this poll, and I see people are still responding. I'll give it another second or two. And it looks like everyone, I think all the answers are in. And so I'm going to end the poll, and then I'm going to share the results with everyone. So did you know about the NYCHA Federal Monitor before today? And most of you did. 77% said yes. Have you visited our website? Only 30%. So we need to work on that. And then how would you like us to communicate with you? And most of you said via email, which is something we've been doing as a first point of communication. But then the second biggest answer is community meetings. So by email and by community meetings. Great. Thank you. And we'll keep that in mind as we move forward. So I'm going to stop the polling. Thank you for that. Thank you for participating. And we are going to move on to Mr. Brownell for a heat update. Dan?
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Brownell. As Floretta said, I'm the deputy monitor, so I kind of have my hands in everything. But more specifically, I focus on heating and elevators. Not that I'm an expert, but I work with a team of experts, both in data analytics and actually capital construction related to elevators and heating, and also some people that just know how to maintain and fix boilers and that kind of thing. So this is gonna be relatively quick. The one thing I want to tell you is that we're gonna have a quarterly report coming out in a few weeks that'll have a complete update of all the main heating analytics from the beginning of the heating season, which was October 1st through the end of 2022. And because each of you are on this meeting and we have your email addresses, not that the reports aren't always available on the website, but we will also be sending them to you directly. And so some of the things that we're going to show you will be in the heat report. They'll be updated by the time the quarterly report comes out, but it'll give you a little bit of idea how to navigate through some of the things, particularly the trend report. So the thing I want to say very quickly about heating is that there have been some relatively significant improvements of heating in the almost 4 years that we've had at the monitor, but that does not mean that NYCHA's heating problems are solved. First of all, I know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to people that live in the developments. And some of you live in developments that have more heating issues than others. As Bart indicated, a lot of times those heating problems relate to what we call the distribution piping, which is in the walls, which in order to replace it requires opening up walls and doing other things, which NYCHA has never done since those buildings were built. And so that's a big problem. And then the other aspect of equipment that affects heating services, of course, is the equipment that actually creates the heat, which is generally the boilers. And so those are kind of the two sides of things. So if you go to the next slide, the focus of the HUD agreement is on two aspects of heating. One is outages, the number of outages. And an outage is a condition that affects heating services in a group of apartments at the same time. It can be a whole section of a building, which NYCHA calls a stair hall. Could be the whole building, it could be the whole development. So for instance, if there's a huge water main break, and I think there was one in Queens about a year ago, that affects water supply to a development, that's going to knock out heating for that whole development, because you need water in order to create heat, whether it's hot water or whether it's steam. So that's an example of that. The other kind of heating problem is a heating problem that affects individual units, which we call a unit heat shortage. That could be if your radiator valve, for whatever reason, they didn't come during the summer to check the valve and the valve doesn't work, or the radiator needs to be bled so that it doesn't work. That's only going to affect your unit. That's a problem, of course, if you live, and for you that lives in that unit, but that's different than an outage. And NYCHA is required under the agreement to meet certain performance metrics with regard to both outages and unit heat shortages. The other aspect of the performance is the duration of the outages. The duration is from the time the outage starts. Let's say the flame on the boilers goes out. So the start of that outage would be at the time when the boilers were non-functioning, and the outage ends when heat is restored to its proper levels, which are dictated by New York City Administrative Code. So just to give you a little overview, those are the main things. So as we said, if you go near the bottom of this particular slide, in general, there's two major causes of problems when there are outages. One is the equipment that generates the heat has a problem and isn't working. which is generally, as I said, boilers. And there are some new technologies which NYCHA is installing, which aren't boilers, but other kinds of heat generating equipment. And the other is the systems that transport the heat from the boilers to each individual unit. If you could go to the next slide. So, you know what, Floretta, why don't you go right to the trend report? So I know this looks really dense and complicated. It's got a lot of stuff, but this is what we call a trend report. This one's for heating. The monitor team also produces a similar kind of report for elevators. During the heating season, we produce these reports every 2 weeks. We provide them to NYCHA, we provide them to HUD, we provide them to the Southern District. As I told you, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have our next quarterly report, which is going to contain, it'll be more updated data than this for the heat section of the quarterly report. The two things I want to focus on kind of in the upper left-hand corner is a comparison of both count of outages and duration times that compare this year to last year. So the upper box, if you look at December 2022, obviously that's December that just passed, there were 22 outages. A year ago in December of 2021, in that particular month, there were 77 outages, which was bad. Obviously 28 is a lot better than 77. So NYCHA is heading in the right direction. But as I said, I don't want to, candy coat this. There's still a lot of work to do. If you look at November of this year, there were 49 outages. A year ago, there were 116 outages for the same time period. Again, heading in the right direction. Duration time is just as important as number of outages because obviously, particularly when the weather is quite cold, the longer there's no heat being produced, the more the heat in the building is being lost. So for instance, Christmas weekend, a couple weekends ago, for those outages that happened either on Saturday or Sunday, those buildings lost heat much faster, when the temperatures were in the teens and in the 20s than they would have lost if they were in the upper 30s or the mid 40s. So if you look at duration time for December of the just passed 2022, the average duration time of outages was a little over 6 hours. Over a year ago for December, it was 8.3 hours. For November, the duration time was approximately 8 hours. A year ago, the duration time was 9 hours, which is longer. Again, heading in the right direction, still a lot of work to do. The trend reports also break down outages and duration times by developments. You can see, particularly on the right-hand side, there's a breakdown. Baruch Houses has had the most outages so far this year with 6. Reese Houses, in fact, I know it's more than 6 because there were at least 2 outages last week at Baruch, so I think the total is now up to 8. Reese Houses, which is just below Baruch, has had 5 outages, and you can see the list there. The other thing we report on, if I don't know if you can go down a little bit, Floretta, to see the lower part of the slide, maybe you know what, it's on the next page. Before you go to the next page, just talk about some other things that we look at. As Bart indicated, about generally about 50% of the outages are caused by problems in the distribution system versus the boilers. The data analytics that our team looks at, and NYCHA also does, and we share analytics in evaluating the causes of outages is very important because it really helps NYCHA to focus their attention on the aspects of the system that are most in need of attention and preventive maintenance. Why don't you go to the next slide? So this is the lower half of the trend report. If this was the actual monitor report, this would actually be one sheet. So this is a comparison of the count of outages by month, and also the count of resident complaints, which are not related to outages, but these are the unit heat shortages that I talked about a minute ago. as you can see for this year, the count is actually down from last year. One of the things to remember, though, well, it's two things to remember. One is the temperatures this year through the middle of December were kind of significantly higher than they were a year ago. And that makes a big difference, of course, because the warmer the temperatures that are, the less stress there is on NYCHA's equipment. And given the age and condition of the equipment, the more stress that's on that equipment, the higher the possibility of breakdowns. And then the other thing is, and this is where the statistics the data that we're going to be getting for the last part of December is going to be very interesting, when the temperatures dropped for those 5 days just before Christmas until the middle of the following week, where there were definitely more outages and there was more stress on the equipment, will be probably a closer comparison to last year. Although I can tell you that the number of outages and the duration of outages is still going to be significantly less than it was a year ago. And then if you go towards the middle of this particular chart, it says the worst 10 developments by count of outages. Obviously, since you're resident leaders all across NYCHA, some of you probably live in these developments. So that's a comparison by year of the count of outages. Why don't you go to the next? So as I said, some of the things that we do and the monitor team is we have experts in the field that go out and do regular boiler room inspections. They don't just look at boiler rooms, they look at tank rooms and they look at other aspects of distribution systems when we can. We provide that information to NYCHA, especially when there are concerns that something needs to be addressed recently. So I think it was yesterday, at one of the developments in the upper part of Manhattan, one of our experts went in and found that a valve on some kind of a steam valve had popped, which meant that it was no longer functioning. So that I saw the photographs from his report, so that the boiler room was full of steam, but of course, more significantly, not enough heat was being produced. So he immediately got on the phone to Javier, the head of the heat department, and reported it so that someone could go there immediately and look into it and get it fixed. So that's one of the aspects of what we do. The other thing we do is preventive maintenance in the summer, and Bart has said this a bunch of times, is in some ways the most important time for heating at NYCHA isn't so much the winter. Obviously, that's the time when the heat is being produced and is needed. But in terms of maintaining the system, the critical time is the summer, when the boilers and things can be turned off so that they can be cleaned and repaired. And 2 summers ago, NYCHA just didn't do a very good job. They didn't get it done, and they didn't do a very thorough job. And so when near the end of the summer, we knew that, particularly when the weather got cold, that NYCHA was going to have lots of problems with heat outages. And unfortunately, that's what ended up happening. So we worked with NYCHA starting well over a year ago, in making sure that this past summer that their preventive maintenance program was much more comprehensive and thorough, and that they got their work done. I can't say that they got everything done, but they got pretty close, and they did much better than they did a year ago. And we've evaluated the work they did this past summer. We provided them with recommendations to make sure that this coming summer, the preventive maintenance program is even better.
Dan, may I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Because I think it would be helpful at this to mention that part of what we do is to make sure that we get as much independent and reliable information as we can, certainly not relying on everything that NYCHA tells us. And maybe you could just briefly explain the surprise inspections we did in Manhattan and the Bronx.
Yeah, so boilers obviously is going to always be the main focus of any kind of preventive maintenance, but there's other kinds of key equipment that are necessary in order for the heating system to work properly. And one are condensate tanks, which I'll call them traditional, which most of NYCHA's heating systems are. Boiler room has, it's a big tank that is used to prepare the water both chemically and temperature wise, so that when it goes into the boiler, it's going to do the least amount of damage to the water. Can be very caustic. Least amount of damage to the boiler as possible as part of the heating process. we were finding over and over again that the condensate tanks were not being properly maintained, and in some cases weren't even working properly. So that NYCHA was literally sticking a hose in the condensate tank, and this quote unquote raw water was actually going into the boilers, which will quickly corrode the interior of a boiler. And the other key pieces of equipment that we saw was not being properly maintained were tanks, which are used to pump the hot water up into the buildings. And so we did a year ago, a little over a year ago, we did surprise inspection and audit of both condensate tanks and also hot water tanks, and provided that to NYCHA for them to provide us with a schedule of when they were going to get these things repaired. We didn't tell them we were going out there. We focused on Manhattan and the Bronx, which have the oldest heating systems of anywhere in NYCHA. And so there's been an improvement in both, as I said, condensate.
That was a pretty high number.
I think 73% of the condensate tanks that we inspected, and there were a lot of them, needed some form of pretty significant repair and maintenance, which is obviously just unacceptable, because you're wrecking your own you're wrecking boilers that are not in great shape to begin with. You know, Florida, at this time, I don't want to take more time, but one of the things I want to tell people, especially because the people on this call are resident leaders, is when you have heating issues, or your development or building have heating issues, you know, and I know at the end of this presentation, and you probably have it anyway, there's a phone number you can call us. I look at all those things, especially anything related to heating and boilers, heating and elevators. And so please don't hesitate if your building has a particular problem, or even your apartment, because obviously you're not only resident leaders, but you're also residents. Feel free to reach out, and I will look at those. And if there's something where we can look into it deeper, we would be happy to do that. We know that some buildings have particular problems with regard to heating, that maybe with a little more attention from NYCHA can be fixed, or at least have a better idea of the cause of the problem. And so we would be happy to work with you in doing that. So don't hesitate to reach out, and you can even, you know, say Dan or whatever. And obviously, you know, there are a couple of us that look at those, and that'll pretty much guarantee that it'll get to me. And then from there, I can make sure it gets to the right people, and we'll elevate it so that we'll get some sort of hopefully a good resolution.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for that update. And I'm glad you mentioned the way to contact. I mean, we do for heat issues and other issues. Just a reminder to first contact the CCC, which is on the screen. It will help us better serve you as the monitor team. And in cases where your complaint has gone unresolved, please contact us by email at monitor@nycha.com, or you can call us at 347-809-5555. There's also a toll-free number at 877-309-6080. And I just wanted to quickly share, just by example, we received this today. Cordero Lopez from Manhattan had reported over this past weekend no heat. And as of Monday, still without heat, she contacted the NYCHA Federal Monitor. We picked up her voicemail from our phone line, and immediately did all we could to escalate her complaint. And thankfully, her heat was restored the same day. And Mr. Stanford received a text message from her today. Good morning. When I got home yesterday, we were getting heat, not to the extreme, but it was okay for me. I want to thank you for all your help. Have a wonderful day. We just got that today, and I just wanted to include that. So again, you know, we really do try not to ignore any complaints that come to us, and we try our best to support what you're trying to accomplish, especially in terms of complaints and issues that are happening in this heat season. It's so important that we are in a position where we're safe and and heat is a major issue. So,
Florida,
sure.
go
Could
ahead.
you give that toll-free number again? Because you gave one number and a different number was on the screen.
Sure. It's the toll free. It's 844, sorry.
Okay.
844-309-6080.
So the screen is correct. Good. Thanks.
Yes.
Florida, I just saw something in the chat saying Staten Island doesn't seem to be on the charts. That's because NYCHA combines Queens with Staten Island. So, and so the statistics for Staten Island would be in the section for Queens.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that, Dan. This brings us to our Q&A discussion. I'm asking Mr. Stanford if he would please prepare the first 3 speakers as we're about to open the floor to hear from the residents. To help support tonight's conversation, I'm pleased to have some of our pillar leads in the room tonight. Bart mentioned some of their names. I want to reiterate that in addition to Mr. Swartz and Mr. Brunel, we have Joe Jaffe for compliance. We have Chuck Fax and Tamika Williams-Moore for pest and waste. And we have Fred Baldino who covers our field investigations. Dennis Walsh, who is on the screen, he is not in the room tonight, but he is standing by via phone. Thank you all for being available for tonight's discussion. I'm going to unshare my screen and we can begin to speak with the residents.
Just say one more thing, Floretta. I
Sure.
noticed that some of the chat, there were requests for information, such as there was just one for the action plans, and can you email them? The answer is yes. And if when somebody requests something that would be of interest to everyone, we'll send it to everyone, not just the one person who requested.
And I'll note that all of that information is also available on the website for the monitor team.
I was just going to say that. Thank you, Asha. Yes, everything, all of our reports, including the HUD agreement action plans, is on our website, NYCHAmonitor.com. So please feel free to visit us there. Mr. Stanford, who's up first, please?
Yes, Ms. Hudson, we have first Miss Geraldine Hopper. She's from Classen Point Gardens in the Bronx.
Okay, great. I see that she's been moved over. Ms. Hopper, you have the floor.
Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
Can all of y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we
Thank
can.
you kindly. I am Geraldine Eggleston Harper, and I do live in Classen Point Gardens. I've been a resident since 1956. As you all know, that Classen Point Gardens is not like any other development that's under the umbrella of the New York City Housing Authority, because we are like a home type development. We are duplex. We have 401 different size of apartments, back and front yards. And it's so often that as a president, I'm told that we are not like anybody else, where y'all are actually dealing with buildings. And it's hard for me to actually have someone to come here and look at the molding and everything that's going on in Classen Point Gardens compared to what is being done out of all of y'all other 348 developments that are actually buildings. And I just would like to know that someone on this monitor would recognize us as part of the umbrella of the New York City Housing Authority, so that we can get some of the work that's done all over the 5 boroughs here in Classen Point Gardens.
Can I respond to that, Floretta?
Sure.
Yeah, you make a very good point in that you are different. And so a lot of the solutions that people try to come up with may not fit well for you. But here's what we can do. I mentioned in the opening remarks that we have a group of field investigators who are out visiting the developments and visiting with the residents and the resident association officers. And the leader of that group was Mr. Baldino, is on this call, and we also record this, so we have the information. We'll follow up with you and make an appointment for at least one, if not more, of our field investigators to go out and meet with you.
I thank you oh so well, because we need is someone to actually come out before we get into what they have going on now with the new type of initiatives that they're trying to do in order for them to actually improve in all of the conditions for a good quality of life for the resident customer clients. But I would like for someone to come out and actually walk this land. It's 28 acres of land. And I would like to see presence that they will come out and look at what is the needs for us to keep a good quality of life and give most of the residents here have been here, some of them 75 years. 75 years. And I know we're prime property for y'all because we are historical land. But this is not my first go at being the president of Classen Point Gardens. I was the president under the citywide chair, Jerry Lamb. I took a break and I came back in 2016 and I was just reelected. So I was the first chair under Jerry, and I just would like to see more presence and the recognition that the New York City Housing Authority understand and consider us as being part of their umbrella, and we need the same needs as everyone else.
Understood. We thank you, Ms. Hopper, for those comments. And as Bart mentioned, we will certainly follow up with you. We have our pillar leads on the line, and please, we have your contact information, so we will contact you by your email address that we have on file and follow up to make sure that we speak with you in more detail about this.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you all for your listening in.
We appreciate you. And on Mr. Stanford, can you tell us who's up next, please?
Yes, we have Miss Martinez. Miss Martinez.
Welcome, Ms. Martinez. Please unmute and
Okay, hi. Can you hear me now?
I can hear
Yes.
you. Yes, go right ahead.
Yes, good evening. I just wanted to know if I was the one that put in the note about getting the action plan, copies of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see those and read them. And so would my husband. I'm from Classen Point Gardens. I'm the treasurer. And I'm very pleased with this meeting and everything that's going on.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Ms. Martinez, I know we mentioned that all of our reports are on our website, but if it's more convenient for me to send you copies, is that more convenient for you? Or are you able to access our website?
Yes, yes.
But we prefer emails.
We prefer the email, yes.
Yeah, we'll send it to you.
Okay.
We'll
Thank
be
you.
happy to send it to you. No problem. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, Florida, I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Many times, one of the issues that we run into with NYCHA is their inability to communicate with the residents, or their laxity in trying to communicate with details and accurate information. And when we complain about that, we're always told, well, we made robocalls. And we have real questions about the validity and the effectiveness of the robocalls. So as folks get to the microphone, I wouldn't mind hearing about whether you think robocalls are effective. We, as I said, from what we know how they keep the phone records, so that they don't have accurate and up-to-date information. And so every time you tell us, oh, we made thousands and thousands of robocalls, so what if they're not getting through? And I'd like to be able to hear about that.
That's,
I saw some emojis. I think that was cooperating, agreeing with me, but I wasn't sure.
yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to create that poll for you right now, Bart.
Oh, that's great.
Robocalls, let's launch something here. It's going to be an unentitled poll 2. I'm launching it right now. The question is, robocalls, are they effective? Yes or no? If people can just go ahead and respond very quickly, we can get some answers. It's actually a really good question, Bart, because we're always looking for ways how to best communicate. Even with Ms. Martinez, if she prefers email, we could do that. If she prefers waiting for a community meeting to just hear what our updates are, we can do that. But any way we can improve would be great. Thank you so much, you guys. No is the majority of the answer, but it's kind of close to a 50-50.
Oh, is it? Okay. All right.
Okay, so I'm going to end that.
That's not going to stop me, but that's okay.
In that poll for you. I have shared those results, but thank you so much for quickly jumping in to give us some answers. Mr. Stanford, who's up next?
Yes, next we have Miss Vanessa Jones Hall from Astoria. Ms. Hall, please unmute and you can proceed, please.
Ms. Hall, we're going to give you another minute to unmute your device.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year's. I'm from Astoria Houses, the newly elected TA president of Astoria. My family been in that community since 1951, one of the first 10 settlers to be in that community. We've watched that community make a lot of changes, and you see a lot is going up and around Astoria Houses. Our concerns are not only one of the developments that's on your list of constant outages for heat and hot water, and we were one of those who were out for Christmas. And we have like a lot of the developments of NYCHA, we have a lot of elderly, and we have a lot of those who are shut in and mobile challenged, other than those who are, you know, just regular people who are concerned about the quality of life that we're living in our community. Our problem with that I see with this monitoring, I've heard many times the federal monitor coming through and doing different things, and how diligent you all are about monitoring and doing surprise visits, as it was stated earlier. And I still see the same things still occurring, like really no real results have come out of this. One time you had a federal monitor who actually spent the night in Queensbridge houses to actually see hands-on of what the residents are dealing with. And I didn't see where that really showed any real significant change. I had complained when we had our outages. Just recently, we had a meeting with some of the officials from NYCHA that came and visit my board and I at the property manager's office, along with the borough president. And with that, in that session, we expressed how, you know, what as a Sandy affected community, how we see no real results after that. We're still working on the same original boilers from Hurricane Sandy. 10 years. That is ridiculous for us to still be dealing with these boilers who are struggling to maintain heat and hot water for our community, which those boilers, from what I understand, are coming to a close when it comes to the contract, the contract duration for that boiler to be in place. Then once that boiler is gone, then what's the next step? We're gonna have a boiler that's only dealing with one, and we're talking 10 years. Too often, NYCHA wastes a lot of money in this matter when you're hiring contractors. I worked on the NYCHA, the Sandy project, the Resilient project, and I firsthand saw a lot of the delinquency, a lot of the disarray, and a lot of non-concerns of the people who was in charge of handling it. Another concern is how those who are placed in charge are often allowed, when things hit the fan and errors are made, that they're allowed to step away, walk away, and leave us in deplorable conditions, which is extremely unfair. And it's not right that you insist on us making sure that we continue to do the right thing by paying our rent. But the thing most importantly is that this causes the residents to be so disheartened and displeased with our landlord, who we only ask for the best quality of life that we deserve. I don't care if you pay $2,550 or $1.25 for rent. We deserve the best quality of life that is deserving to anyone who lives in no matter what community. But what we are asking from you as a federal monitor is to please step up the game. Please say that what you're saying and all these things that you're doing, really show the results, not just on paper. Let it be seen physically to us. It is time now. 2023, it should be where everybody got their act together when it comes to NYCHA. 2023, we should not still be seeing you doing an assessment. 2023, we should not be still hearing that you are looking into the problem, because far too much money from that $3 billion that y'all allowed that contractor to be in charge of the Sandy project has made a lot of errors. If you look at the Daily News, who did on the front page investigation of how they greatly mishandled the funding, it would be so disheartening to see that they still are doing the same thing. As a federal monitor, I, on behalf of my executive board, who is also on this Zoom, on behalf of our community, we are asking you to please, for 2023, show us better results on what it is your purpose of coming before us, so we can deserve the better quality of life and to keep our homes safe. Thank you.
If I may, Floretta?
Yes, please.
Yep. Ms. Jones Hall, I really can't dispute anything that you said. Although we're not involved in the Sandy work, the problems of Sandy are the same problems in the day-to-day things that we see at NYCHA. And the way we're trying to fix this in two different ways, maybe more than two different, but two essentially different ways. One is the inspections we do, the experts we bring in, preparing things so that they work better. The other is through accountability. We are working, and NYCHA has been somewhat cooperative in this, in the organizational plan. A major part of the plan and of the HUD agreement is to make people accountable for their jobs, for their work, for performing their work. So I understand your frustration, and I also I know over the years you've been told things, and people have just not only have they not come through, they've done the opposite. But we are doing the best we can, and will continue to work hard to create these lines of accountability. So people must do their work, and they must be held to do their work, so that they're trained properly. A lot of this falls on NYCHA's failure to train people to do their jobs. And that's something that we've been working. We were on calls all day, a good part of today, dealing with training issues. That's something you're not going to see immediately, although in some places you are, but in a lot of places you're not until the training gets done. But that's not going to. We're not going to slow down. We're not going to stop, and we'll keep pushing. And I hope, a few months from now, and certainly at the end of this calendar year, for us and for all of us, you'll be able to say that you can see a difference We have been told people are seeing some differences. In fact, if going back to the rent issue before, it is disheartening for everybody to see that as we're making progress, and there is some progress, then we get hit with this failure, this $400 million shortfall in the budget. It's just that not going to use it as an excuse, but it's another hurdle that we have to get over. But I'm not going to disagree with the things you said, and we'll continue to try to do our best, and I think we'll show you we can do it.
And thank you, Ms. Jones Hall, for you got a lot of hand raises and thumbs up while you were talking. You definitely touched on what others in the audience tonight is concerned about. So I really appreciate your comments. I wish we had more time to give you the floor, but we will certainly follow up with you. Please, whatever in addition you have to share with us, please put it in the chat, and we will certainly follow up with you this week to close the loop with you. Mr. Stanford, if you could introduce the next person, please.
Yes, we have Miss Karen Leader. Miss Leader?
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, you can hear me.
Yes.
Again, my name is Karen Leader, and I'm a resident of Cooper Park Houses. I'm also the secretary of Cooper Park's Resident Council. Two concerns that I have, one being the specifically, what are the sensors that were placed in our apartments? What were they placed there to do? What's happening is that when someone is cooking, it may appear that our apartments are being heated properly. The sensors are then turned off if they're functioning properly. However, the apartments remain ice cold. In addition to that, I think the New York City heat law requires that the temperature inside the unit has to be, I think, 60 degrees Fahrenheit. What is happening is that these timers are turning off in our apartments, leaving even though they reach that temperature, the apartments are still cold. If you should touch the walls, which are brick and concrete or plaster, they're ice cold. These sensors are not working. It has gotten a little better in Cooper Park houses. However, it's not enough where the majority of the tenants or residents are comfortable. Another concern that I have is the motorized scooters, the electric bikes. I was wondering, are they banned on NYCHA's properties? Because you read about the lithium batteries overheating, and not only are they causing fires, but they're also taking lives. And when we walk outside, we see these bikes chained to our gates and our fences. And I was just wondering what can be done to get these bikes off of NYCHA's property.
Bart, can I respond to the heat?
I was going to suggest that, yes.
Yeah,
thanks.
so Miss Leader, and I have actually don't think I've ever been to Cooper Park. But my sense is that the sensors you're talking about are the sensors that are used to manage the boiler operation. And so the way that those sensors are set up, that if in one or two apartments, if someone were, had the stove on or something that raise the temperature in the apartment, that's not going to affect the overall operation of the boilers, because that depends on many sensors all at once. One of the things that you might do, and I don't know whether you have a thermometer,
I do.
is to take the temperature, kind of yourself. Obviously, you don't want to do it, near a source of heat. You don't want to do it near the window where it might be cold. kind of do it in the middle of the apartment, so it'll, you know, kind of represent the overall apartment temperature. And under city law, between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., the temperature is not supposed to go below 62. And during the day, which would be 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., the temperature should not go below 68 degrees. And so if you have your own thermometer, you can tell, obviously, what the temperature is. And if you and as Floretta indicated, you know, if there's a problem, always call the CCC first. If there's not a work order, that's a guarantee that nothing is going to happen.
I have been taking the temperature since October. I have been logging it down, the temperature outside and the temperature in my apartment. We are supposed to, NYCHA is supposed to be supplying residents with a thermometer. And although I do have my own thermometer, the walls are still cold. It's bringing in the cold air. It reads 70 degrees, but it is freezing in here. These walls are ice cold.
Yeah, so if you would like, and I think Floretta probably has your contact information, we can have someone go there on our team. And you know, if you'd like, I don't want to, you know, if you're willing to do that, and we can look into it a little more.
Yes, thank you.
And Tamika, haven't you heard, you've heard some of the same things, haven't you? And maybe you can help Dan with this.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we've been hearing the same thing here in Queens. There's been installation of the same sensors, and we're hearing the same thing that Ms. Sturgeon reported. So as Dan said, Ms. Sturgeon, we'll get back to you. Okay.
Thank you.
The other thing is, I would add that the field team have calibrated thermometers so that we can really come and do an actual assessment in terms of the temperature in the apartment, an independent assessment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
What about the bikes?
Bikes is a little more complicated.
Yeah, the e-bikes.
You know,
Well, I think that's the fact is that that's really something that it's not within our jurisdiction, so to speak. And it's something that has to be dealt with by NYCHA and the community members, city council. There are a lot of pieces to that, but frankly, it is not one that we've focused on because many other people are focusing on it, particularly the battery issue, which is we certainly have focused on the fire aspects of this, but not if we found that these scooters, if you show us that they're preventing maintenance from taking place and so forth, then we'll respond to that and see what we can do.
Thank you so much, Bart. The speakers that have spoken so far, these are our first time, their first meeting before the monitor team. So we appreciate all of your comments and all of your feedback. And now we're going to move into some more of our regular attendees, regular attending residents. And if I'm not mistaken, am I correct, Chase?
We have one more, and that will be Miss Cynthia Tibbs.
Okay, Cynthia is
I'm here.
A veteran, and she has come to some of our meetings in the past. Cynthia, go right ahead. Happy to have you.
So as a president of my development on the Upper West Side and also a second chair for Manhattan South DCOP, I want to say I consider it pretty insulting that you throw pie charts at us and expect us to believe what NYCHA gives you when we all know NYCHA lies. Case in point, I have 36 buildings, 21 of them, 10 of them are on a boiler, 11 of them are forced steam. Had a steam pipe break on 2 separate blocks the Friday before Christmas, when we had the coldest winter snap of all this winter. I had seniors whose apartments were flooded, freezing, no heat, no nothing. I had emergency services come up with sub pumps to pump the water out, and they still froze. You throw Javier's number up there. Javier was on Christmas vacation. He didn't answer his phone. It went directly to voicemail. We couldn't get any help from them. I had 21 buildings down from Friday to Tuesday morning with no assistance except when the media showed up Monday evening. NYCHA did not put us on their outage list. They never do. All my tenants flooded the emergency call center. They did not put us on the outage. They did not put up robocalls. You want to know when they put up robocalls? After NYCHA had to send a private plumber up here because the NYCHA plumbers reinstalled new pipes that Christmas night. And when they tried to turn the heat on, they exploded again and cracked because they didn't have them soldered in correctly. So what good are NYCHA plumbers if they don't know their job when they're getting not only overtime pay, but they're getting holiday pay? They had to get a private plumber to come up here that resolved the problem in a matter of 4 hours. And when it comes to the monitor's office, I give it to Chris, because as soon as Chris came to work that Tuesday and read his email, that man was here Wednesday morning. So kudos to Chris, who's not on the call. But you guys, I don't want to see a pie chart. I don't want to hear about it's a boiler problem or it's a condensation problem, when I have told them for 10 years that in the off season, they need to bleed out these steam risers, and they don't do it. And they keep changing the heads. Before it was Javier, it was Christian. Before it was him, it was someone else. It doesn't matter who's in charge of heating. They don't do their jobs, and you guys are not holding their feet to the fire. And we suffer. Yes, we live here. That's how we get elected as presidents, because we live on the developments. So of course we're residents. But you guys got to start paying attention more, because my residents are suffering. They suffered for 4 days. I had to get my city councilwoman, Gail Brewer, to bring a bus up here so my residents could warm up. I told everybody to go to their friends, go to their family, get out of these apartments. Forget Christmas in your apartment. It's not going to work. NYCHA's not coming to save us. So don't show me a pie chart anymore. Don't waste our time with 20 minutes of telling us how heating works. I know how the panels work. I know how the boiler works. I know how the forced steam works. It doesn't matter what I know. I don't get paid to run it. NYCHA does. And NYCHA's doing a piss poor job at keeping us warm. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Sis Tibbs. We appreciate your comments, and as Bart mentioned earlier, we're not going to disagree that there are some major issues in the reporting and the work that's being done. I actually moved Christopher Fasano over because I wanted to acknowledge that he is certainly one of our field representatives that is doing a great job at supporting the issues that are in the field.
And Flora, I'd like to mention that Chris is on the call. He's monitoring this call.
Yeah, I just moved him over, so
he's a great guy. He shows up. He shows up. He takes pictures. He saw the mess we had. I had a senior resident who speaks Russian, and because she doesn't speak English, her entire ceiling was down, and no one was coming to assist her. Nobody.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for the comments. And I reached out today to her translator, and the progress is being made. They repaired
the finally, because we're all over there watching it now. I know. Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And thank you.
But don't show us pie charts. Stop listening to NYCHA. You want to know a pie chart? Talk to us, and I guarantee you your pie chart's going to look nothing like what NYCHA supplies you with. The outages that we have will look nothing like the outages NYCHA's supplying you with. We know better. We do this for free. We don't get paid. We do it for free. No one knows better than we do.
And Cynthia, I think we should mention that the field team does not accept the information that NYCHA provides. We actually try to go out and independently verify, prove or disprove the information that's being supplied. And in part, that's what Chris does and the other team members do as well.
Right, but I've listened for a half hour tonight of pie charts and how the boilers work and how this and that. And no offense, I don't need to hear that when we have serious issues going on. And NYCHA's pie charts don't work for me. That's all.
Well, to your point, you know, we've set out even internally here that our coming meetings will certainly address more communication data directly from the residents, especially from the resident association members. We want to hear feedback like this from you so we can go back to NYCHA and dispute, if we have to, some of the data that seems to be inaccurate. So thank you so much. We will always welcome comments like this, and no, it's not just talk. We certainly want to enable results for you guys. So thank you again, Ms. Tibbs, for that feedback. We are moving forward with our discussion tonight. I just wanted to acknowledge Serena Chandler. Serena, I did not miss you. You're later on in our agenda, so I wanted to save you for the next segment. But you can certainly voice your concern now, and then we'll bring you back. So go ahead and unmute, and let's hear from you. Hello.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So I've been listening. Sometimes I like to talk, and other times I like to just listen, lest I open my mouth and let my inexperience show. But I'm going to say this. There is enough blame to go around. We all know what the problems are, and we all know who the problems are. I think that accountability needs to be on the table across the board for you monitors, for NYCHA, for us TA presidents, and for our residents. I am going to echo what the woman says about the pie chart. The pie chart does me not one bit of good, and it is as much use to you as a beached whale. We need to stop looking at data and look at how people are living. I have a resident in my development who lives on the 30th floor in the building that I live in, who claims she has not had heat in 10 years. I, on the other hand, run air conditioning year around because it is ungodly hot in my apartment. The windows are too small for the frames. The windows on the top are always slightly ajar. The heat is escaping and the bugs are coming in. NYCHA and you monitors need to think things all the way through and consider the unthinkable outcomes for the new things that you are trying to give us, for the old things that you have given us that have worked, that have since been taken away. We need people on campus at all times. When the boiler goes down, if they need to reset it or push a button, they should be here. I should not be woken up at 3:30 in the morning by my residents who have no heat, who are seniors and cold, who have infants and are cold. So, we need to look at the reasons why these boilers are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. We need to look at the reason why our apartments are cold in some spots and hot in others. Put the right windows in, for God's sake. Get someone on campus all the time that can address these boilers when they go down. And the CCC number is a joke. I've blocked them. I get 45 robocalls about an elevator outage, but no one has still come to call on my neighbor whose bathroom ceiling is fell in. So I don't want any robocall from anyone. If you send me a robocall, I will quickly block you. And that's all I have to say about that. And I'll be back for your next segment. I like being highlighted.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler, and thank you for all you've said. Dan, I think you've touched on this earlier in terms of, you know, what we can do to make adjustments for heat and how we should go about it. Again, but you know, it's a repeat of what some of the other residents have said, that you know, we get the data, but it's not really translating over to some of the residents that are still experiencing major problems. What can we say to that?
Well, it's both. You need to look at the data, verify that it's accurate, but you also need to see what's happening in the field. What's actually happening in the boiler rooms and in the buildings.
And you have to train the people to do the work the right way.
Yeah.
And then have somebody who is watching to make sure that it's done and is accountable if they don't get the work, if they don't do it the right way. And that's not limited to heat.
I understand. And so we'll just have to keep at it. As I said, that we're going to really try and engage the resident leaders more in the coming months. That is our focus this year. So we're going to keep working on it. And we are actually close to the end of our.
If I may, I don't think it's a question now of we don't need to learn about the problems. We know what they are. As I said earlier on, you didn't need a monitor to be appointed to know that you didn't have heat. So the communication is important, and you should be keeping us informed, and we'll do the same. But we've got to really focus on the NYCHA management, the NYCHA governance procedures, trying to figure out where they get some money to get some things done, and to make sure they don't use these things as excuses for not getting the work done.
Excuse me, pardon me. I have got to be able to say what I came on here to say.
Mrs. Glover, I was calling on you next, and
oh, thank you.
And if you could, yes, please, and then following you will be Mrs. Eldon, and if you could keep it to a minute or two, we'd appreciate that if you can. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Okay, thanks a lot. Mr. Schwartz, I want to know what the number is, the cell number that I can speak to you. I don't want the numbers that's all posted up everywhere. I want where I can actually talk to you, because these tenant associations are illegitimate. The bylaws are illegitimate. They were waived when the elections took place so that all tenants can vote, when in actuality in 2017, Gina Watkins said that there was a paper given to the tenants associations saying that all tenants can vote as long as they're in good standing and over 18 years old. That's number one. So that means anybody that was giving money to TAs for membership dues, give them their money back. That's number one. Number two, resident engagement supposedly was upgraded to resident participation in civic whatever. And these people are illegitimate. Number one, I ran for financial treasurer at Washington Houses. And because the board didn't want me on the board, I did everything. I tried to go to the meetings, I called them, I emailed them, all these kind of things here. And when I posed a question to Gina Watkins, Yuka Vasquez, Miss De Jesus, all of these people, what's his face is the new guy, so I won't call his name. They tell me, I asked them, I said, I'm financial secretary, I'm asking for all receipts, anything dealing with Washington Houses, spending of TPA funds, any program that you've been given, they didn't give it to me. So when I went to resident engagement and asked them to intervene and ask them for that, they tell me, well, we got to go through legalism. And then they turn around, gave Washington Houses 30 days to prove that they had been interacting with me, and they didn't give the stuff in. What's my point? My point is, because we pay rent to live here. We're not living here for free. And I'm gonna tell you like this here. The federal monitor Are you monitoring resident engagement, city council of presidents? They are another ones that needs to be investigated. I'm gonna tell you like this here, because at this point, I already said, if anything happens to me or my family, the first places you go is the West Washington Houses Resident Association, PSA 5, 23rd Precinct, anything that deals with NYCHA. That's the first place you look, because I'm gonna tell you something. I'm not scared anymore. We're paying rent to live here. And if you're a federal monitor and you're being paid to monitor NYCHA, get on your job. Building 5, we got a rat problem here. And I'm gonna tell you something about me. I was TA president back on Bloomberg. I'm gonna tell you, we got a rat problem here that needs to be addressed. Every time somebody walk by, they screaming. My window is right underneath it, and I'm sick of it. And we don't have no manager. We don't have no superintendent. Our TA president, she did the best. They did the best. They did some dirt. But you know what? Let bygones be bygones. I want to know, what are y'all going to do about them rats in building 5?
Let me give you my phone number. Let me give you my phone number. Let me give you my phone number.
Oh, good. Let me go get my pen. Hold on.
And this is
okay,
Glover.
Shoot.
I know you and I have been corresponding leading up to this meeting. I'm happy to give you Mr. Swartz's number, and he's
give it to me.
Not
the one that's posted.
This is my direct
email address.
So here it is.
Inquirer.
None of my direct line is 212. Right, 817. 817. 6733.
6733. I'm sick of it. We're not living here for free. I don't care if you're retired or welfare, whatever. We paying rent to live in. If I sound bipolar, ludicrous, whatever you want to, let me tell you something. Tennis, we got the power. We got the power. We just don't realize we got it. When they brought infill here.
Ms. Glover, I appreciate everything you're saying, and I am not disputing anything you're saying. You mentioned
you got the right one
issues and ways. You mentioned a number of issues, and we are reporting tonight, and we will
Federal monitor,
respond to
let's
you.
See what you do.
Mrs.
I want to see what you do.
We will put you in touch with Art directly, and let's take it from there. I wish we had more time to speak with you tonight, but let me get with Miss Eldon. Thank you.
Well, we have access to this recording.
Florida, let me just address Miss Glover's concern. Miss Glover, I did hear that you were talking about you had a pest issue in your development. So we will come out and investigate the pest issue that you're having at Washington.
That's what everybody tell us. Now, if I said it about my rent, I'm gonna pay you as soon as I get my money, and then somebody rob me, then what?
Ms. Glover, I can assure you that we will be out there, okay? And if you want,
you swear to God, you gonna swear to God. And what's your name?
My name is Tamika Williams Moore, and I will not swear to God, but what I will do is call you. What I will do is call you when I'm there.
You have my phone number?
No, but I'll get it after the meeting.
What you said, Tamika who?
Williams Moore.
Tamika Williams Moore.
Thank you, Ms. Glover. Ms. Eldon, you can unmute and present your comments to the monitor.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. Thank you, Ms. Hudson. No problem. Good evening, Bart, Asha, Dan. You're not foreign to me. So I'm going to make mine real quick and to the point. Number one, the heating system in St. Mary's is still not automated. This is 2 years now. We've been discussing this after the valve points were put onto the system. What's the sense of having the valves there if they're not attached to the control panel and the thermostat? So that's number one, because what they're doing is when it gets cold, they open up the floodgate. So you're burning more oil than is necessary at times when it's 40 degrees compared to when it's 20 degrees. If the valve joints were on properly and it was hooked up to the system, then that would regulate it to the percentage that is needed for the heat that is needed. At 40 degrees, you don't need as much steam heat as you would at 20 degrees. Following me so far?
You're an engineer, correct?
I have a
Or-
fireman's license.
Yeah, so Vincent met with you last winter, correct, from our team?
Briefly.
Yeah, so why don't we have Vincent meet with you again in the next week or two? Would that work for you?
Yes, it would.
Because I'm not sure when the last time he's been at St. Mary's. He may not have been there this year. So I think probably Floretta has your contact information. I certainly remember you. So I'm going to
Yes.
speak, I'm actually meeting with Vincent tomorrow. And so I'll bring that up and I'll have him reach out and meet with you. And because I think it's always best if you can kind of show him. I mean, I know he knows St. Mary's pretty well, but if you can actually be on site with him, it's probably the best, most efficient way to do this, because I know there have been a lot of issues with the valves, not only at St. Mary's, but some of the other developments in the Bronx.
Right, Dan,
Okay.
I mean, it's been about 8 months since the last visit there.
Yeah. Would that
I
work?
appreciate that.
Sheldon?
Yeah, I would like to see, Vincent, if I can meet with him and
Sure.
maybe get some truth to the matter as to why NYCHA has refused to address this issue. It's
Yeah.
2 years.
Yep,
And it should have been resolved by now.
yep.
Number two, I was scheduled for replacement roofs and roof cages. And for some reason, they did not start on December 20th with the roof cages. So Dan, if you could check that out for me.
What's a
rather
roof
than me-
cage? I don't think I even know what that is.
It's something that we, along with your design team, designed and had approved by FDNY. And it prevents people from going to the edge of the building on a
Okay.
high-rise building. As you know, we had 4 bodies that came off of our buildings. So it's important
That's
for us
with,
to
that's
secure
with the,
them.
that's the curved, part of it is the curve at the top.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
So
so
they
do
were
me a
already-
favor, and if I can, I can't promise this, but if I can, I'll go with Vincent, but Vincent is actually the guy you want to talk to. But tell him about that as well, and we'll look into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because I'm
They
waiting for
refer
Ms.
to it as
Trimble.
the suicide prevention fence.
Right.
Right.
Well, at a district meeting, Ms. Trimble was present, her and Ms. Beauvais Hyatt, and she said she would meet me on the 20th. I never heard from her. So if someone could get back to me or have the design team or whomever to update me on the progress and when that is going to begin. Of course, I want a copy of this presentation or a link thereof. And also in regard to the heat issue, you mentioned from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 62 degrees in the apartment. And
Right,
from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 68 degrees
right.
in the apartment. But in reality, the outside temperature during the 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. should be below 55. Is that correct?
Right, during the,
And from 6 a.m. and from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., it should be below 40 degrees.
well, actually, it doesn't matter at night. At night, no matter what the outside temperature is, the interior temperature should be at least 62. During the day, if the temperature goes above 55 degrees, and this isn't true of just NYCHA, but any landlord in the city of New York no longer has to keep the heat on. So it's
Right.
it's different between the day and the night in terms of whether or not you consider the outside temperature.
Right. Well, considering the outside temperature, sometimes they overlook it. And if it's 54 degrees, they'll turn it off. But again, for me, the biggest difference would be the zone valves that are
Right.
attached that can help regulate that problem. The next issue that I
Ms.
want to
Mel-
speak on.
I'm
Yes?
so sorry, Ms. Eldon, but we have to move on to.
Okay, I'm gonna move real quick.
Yes,
You gave
okay.
everybody a long time. I'm gonna
Yep.
make it fast.
All righty.
In regard to the bikes, the electrical bikes, that is the responsibility of the PSAs and the precincts. So whomever is having problem with the bikes, contact your CO at your PSA and speak with them. And you could make arrangements for them to come through and pick those bikes up. And the last portion of my comment is to include Ms. Chandler and say thank you so much for being who you are. And also the training personnel in the offices must be done. We had 3 new building assistants in my development who were not trained, and one who was there was asked to train the 3. It's not fair. Not only that, you know, you can't just hire anybody. We got some real ratchet people that you send into working in our office, and they have no idea of what customer service is about. They are there as customer service. Regardless of what a tenant does when they come to that window, they must be customer servants. And that means that no matter what the situation is, they are to be professional. And that is not happening. That is not happening.
Thank you, Ms.
So
Goldman.
I would hope that someone would address that issue. Dan? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Eldon. We appreciate
you.
your comments. Dan, did you want to respond before we move on?
No,
Well,
I'll
I think I should.
have Vincent contact you, Ms.
Yeah,
Eldon.
and I think it really next is really for me for that for the closing remarks. Is that right, Loretta? It's getting late, I think.
Sure. I'm happy for you to give closing remarks, Bart.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, did we, Bart, there was one more part of the segment that perhaps if we could do quickly before we close, despite the time people want to
all
stay
right,
on.
all right. I'm sorry. Yep, I'm sorry. I missed that.
Yeah, I'm definitely, you know, I do want to be mindful of time, and I do appreciate, and I mean, we have others that didn't get a chance to speak tonight, and we apologize that we have run out of time. So we will certainly look forward to you, you know, at the next meeting. And yes, let me share my screen just to take us through the final segment of our meeting tonight. Thank you, Asha, because I was hoping that we could get to this, but again, I am mindful of everyone's time. We wanted to just take a few minutes to, you know, to ask the residents to share some good news about themselves or their fellow residents. And in doing so, we received a few lovely responses. One from Christine Fields. Ms. Fields is a newly elected board member who utilized their organization's 501c3 status and launched a very special event for children. She was able to partner with Toys for Tots, community leaders, and local supermarkets to create some holiday cheer for the children of 303 Vernon Avenue in Brooklyn. And she sent us this video, and I can only imagine the smiling faces of these children because all of the toys that they received just through the efforts of a few people. Thank you, Christine, for sharing this with us. We appreciate it. It looks like a big success. And then we have Inez Robinson from Campos Plaza 2 in Manhattan. She is the published author of Who Made the Potato Salad, which is a book, a humorous story about how food in African-American culture, particularly in the Black church, is such a big deal. So to the extent of examining the funny stories of how people feel about eating someone else's food. And I just laughed when I, you know, saw the title, and I just wanted to congratulate Miss Robinson. Her book can be found on all of the normal outlets, Amazon, Kindle, and let's support her. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. And then we met Serena Chandler earlier today. She mentioned that in her email to us, she recalled her first day at Polo Grounds when she met Miss Olivia Peterson, who was on Resident Watch. She mentioned how Miss Peterson and the residents had taken such great care about the building and the building safety. And she said, despite the declines over the years, one thing has remained consistent, and that is the presence and dedication of Miss Peterson. Well into her golden years, you can still find her at Resident Watch or gardening and helping her neighbors. And she said Miss Peterson has taken care of them all these years and is truly a resident we should all strive to emulate. Miss Peterson will be honored for her more than 25 years of service at Polo Grounds on January 14th. And then these are emails from presidents at Southview Houses and Gravesend Houses. Miss Ann Johnson, she just wanted to express how dedicated she is to her development and to the success of her development. And similar to her, Maria Nervato sent in to us as well that she's a single parent of 2 boys that are now men, proud of her children, loves her community, and she too is just very dedicated to her association and looking forward to seeing a great year in serving the community in the coming months. I wanted to end with Rose Clifton, who I believe she was on the line tonight. Ms. Clifton is from the Howard Avenue Rehab in Brooklyn. She's 89 years old. She was the first resident to move into her development in 1988, and she still serves her community as TA president and has been an auxiliary police officer for 10 years. We are so happy that she joined us tonight. She says in the last line here that she's in great shape and can still dance and get down. So we thank all of you for sharing your stories with us, with all the residents that took the time to do this. And with that said, we wanted to introduce Edna Handy and Asha Muldrow as the leaders of the community and resident engagement team. We wanted to also highlight in our conclusion, other colleagues who contribute valuable work to our common goal. We look forward to seeing you at our next meetings. As Bart mentioned, we do this bi-monthly, and we will be hosting the next community meeting for Brooklyn on Tuesday, March 14th. We continue to send out notices prior to each meeting, so stay tuned for more information as the year progresses. You can always find this and other information on our website. Thank you for your participation tonight, and I'm happy, Mr. Source, to hand it back over to you for closing remarks.
Bart, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you for reminding me that we had another segment to finish, because that was delightful. I really like that. I want to be very brief. I make the point I want to make is, and I think I understand that sometimes there's a feeling that you have to get everything said and cover everything in these meetings. And I want everybody to understand that we give you as much time as we can, but this is not the limit of the time. We want you to contact us. We will continue to be happy to talk to you. That's why we've been giving out our phone numbers, and we give the numbers out in other ways. So don't feel that if you didn't get a chance to talk to us today, or if some other time comes up and there's no meeting that's scheduled, still please talk to us and call us. We're doing our best. I know many of you may think we're naive. We're really not naive. We understand what we're trying to do. We understand what we're up against. We also understand what resources we have, and they're not unending. And we're doing. I think we're getting the maximum out of what we could do, but we're going to do better and continue to try to do better. So we all wish you well, and please stay in touch with us. We do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Right. Thank you for a terrific job, Loretta. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.